like a lot of the stuff for me at this level, what tend to see is more mental with these kids than it is physical. So it's really about getting them to understand, sequencing and how to set up hitters and what they're looking at when the hitter's doing stuff. And I think that that's kind of a lost art because nowadays it's chase velo. Everybody wants to chase velo. So you have all these things with the weighted balls and the bands and all that. And it's like, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to throw harder. And then they spend 3 years chasing velo, but they don't know how to pitch.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 12 of Mound Visit with Jason Grilli. We have a super awesome episode for you here today. The head coach of a program right here in Syracuse, Moyne College, Division II program, really high-level Division II baseball. The head coach, Scott Cassidy, one of Grilli's foes from back in their high school days, a Liverpool-Baldwinsville rivalry. It's getting common here on the show, if you can't already tell. Great interview with him, but before we get into that, we want to remind you, subscribe to the show on YouTube, Top 100 Sports Network. Go ahead and give the show a follow. If you like to listen to your podcast, you can do that on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Follow all of our social media channels, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. All of those are at Top 100 Sports Net. And without further ado, let's get into the interview.
Welcome back to another edition and a Mound Visit. We have Scott Cassidy this hump day, Wednesday, with us here. And Scott, another local legend, one of my friends and foes. We played a lot of summer ball. I've had a lot of the big guns from Syracuse, New York. We had Scott Brown. We had John Ratliff. And now we got Scott Cassidy, man. We've had some good battles, man. And thank you for coming out this Mound Visit.
No, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I want to ask you, Scott, to start off. Let's start with your baseball career. I mean, you pitched in the major leagues for some great teams, and I was looking at your baseball reference page. I mean, you were kind of a workhorse that last year. So there were some impressive numbers there. Talk to us a little bit, because it's always an interesting thing to hear, no matter, how long you played in the major leagues, what level you played. It's always interesting to hear how that story came to be. So talk to us, from Central New York to the major leagues. How did that journey start?
Yeah, it was a kind of a different path, I think, than a lot of guys may have taken. It started out in Little Leagues, with Jay. Actually, we grew up together playing Little Leagues together. Our dads coached together. So, from the jump, we had some really good people, teaching us how to play the game the right way. And then we just took that into our playing career going forward. But my journey was a little different. When I got into high school, I wasn't a flamethrower or anything. I threw strikes, but I didn't throw too hard. But when I was a junior in high school, I don't know if many people know this about me that's outside of my circle, I actually got cut my junior year. So
wow, it's like a Michael Jordan story here.
Yeah, it didn't pan out quite like his, but I had an opportunity to stay on with the team and practice with them as basically an injured reserve type of guy in case somebody got hurt.
Gotcha.
And I'll tell you, it was probably the most embarrassing year of my playing career, because we had full white jerseys, like Detroit Tigers throwbacks for whites, and grays for on the road like everybody else has, but they didn't have enough jerseys, so we would travel with the team and be on the bench with a fluorescent orange jersey. And I mean,
you're red shirted, basically.
Orange shirted,
exactly. So obviously there was 3 of us. We kept our jackets on all game, but I ended up starting to get in these games for defensive purposes in the last inning, which is okay. You're getting in some playing time, but it's like, let's take the jacket off and run out there and listen to the other fans yell at me about my uniform. So it was a tough year. And then, it was a choice I had to make. I was either done playing or I was going to keep doing it. So I did. The following year, I had a really good year, was recruited to play some college ball. And then, luckily I was, I actually went down south for 2 years in South Carolina, Aiken. which was a D2 school. It was a D2 power at the time, but I didn't play much. And then I ended up coming back, and Dick Rockwell at Lemoyne gave me an opportunity to play for him. And that's kind of really springboarded my career. I had a good year there, good couple years there. Ended up signing with the Blue Jays, the hometown team, played down the street at the stadium. So I was pretty excited. And then
My
I just
dad
kind
tried
of
to actually sign you. My dad, when he was a scout for the St.
Yeah.
Louis
There we
Cardinals
go.
at the time, and he was trying to. Like I said, we were tight, and even though we rivaled each other quite a bit, I mean, the motivation that you had, and I think we were rivaling not each other just as Liverpool Beeville, the rivalry, but I think who was the skinniest, And we used to talk about when Scott used to have to pitch against me, and like who's the battle of the bones right here.
Well, that's when you can't leave Brownie out of that mix either.
No, Brownie was skinny too. I think we should have actually hung out more and gone through the McDonald's or Burger King drive-through just to try to fill up,
You
and
ain't
drink
lying.
a couple Bud Lights at the change of pace or whatever.
Right,
But,
right.
Bud Heavies, really.
Yeah,
But
for
no,
sure.
it's
Some tall
cool
boys.
that it motivated you. Like I said, a lot of people are discouraged. If my son right now, he made the freshman team. He hasn't pitched. I told him I just was going through old paperwork and some of the stuff. I pitched 6 innings as a freshman, right? So you sit there and you talk about development. You never stop developing, and that's kind of always been the theme of my Mound visit. I try to bring on guys to tell their story, whether it's a guy in the minor leagues, a dad at home that's coaching his son. You gotta stick with this, man. It's a long process, and you never stop developing. You might have a breakout when you're 25, 26 years old, you're right. And look at what you did. If you quit because you had that orange shirt, and was like, screw
Right.
it, I'm gonna go screw around with my buddies, go fishing every day or whatever. You kept working because you had a respect and love for the game.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about like your children. Like I have to tell my kid too all the time. It's like worry about your own path. Too many people try to like, well, so and so's playing at this level and he's doing this, and I'm like, you do you, and it'll play out. Other people peak at different times. It's tough. It's something I had to go through, but it's good for me now to be able to relay that to the kids. So it was an interesting path. But you're right. Your dad. Steve. He offered me a contract after my junior year, and I had 1 year left. I didn't play well my junior year because I got mono that year, and
That's
but he
college
gave me the
for you.
opportunity.
That's right. I remember
Yeah.
hearing that. Yeah, man.
And then so then I ended up turning him down. We talk about it whenever I see him. He's like, I had a chance to get you. I'm like, you did. You were the only one that gave me the opportunity. But turned it down. It worked out for me. I had actually ended up being a free agent at the end of my senior year, so could play that a little bit. So it worked out really well. Then I was just my path was I was a starter all through the minors. Until I made the big league squad, and then that was you're in the pen. So it was. I always thought I had a rubber arm until you're throwing 4 days in a row, and you're like, whew. I don't know how rubbery this thing is anymore.
Right. Yeah, but
But,
you were always a guy that threw strikes, man. Had good command and a good sinker, right? And just like I said, we had some days when Babe Ruth was a thing, right? Now it's
Yeah,
all
oh,
this
yeah.
travel ball stuff. Babe Ruth, our parents probably paid 100, $125, and then whatever we ate at the hot dog stack, she had to keep
Right.
the league going. But we won all these state championships. We merged Beeville and Liverpool.
Yeah.
And we went on, man. We had, like I said, good coachings, whether they were our dads or guys like Mike Doyle, Rick
Yep.
Lane, right?
Yeah.
All these
Oh,
people.
yeah.
Nobody would know who these people are. We do, but legends to us. And
Right,
then,
right.
where we went on and where we furthered our careers and had some great memories and great excitement. But look at where you wound up too, right? I think it's awesome to see how guys who love baseball, you're still in it, man. It's awesome that you're got a Moyne College shirt and you got an opportunity to teach these kids and pass that baton on. How's that been for you?
It's been great, man. It's so rewarding, and it's just so different than it was when we were playing. I mean, that when we played, it was like we controlled it. Like we controlled our performance. We did the prep, we did everything. So if something went wrong, it was on us. Like we had to fix it. We can prepare the kids. We put them in positions to succeed, but it's different when you're watching the game and you're like, man, what's going on out there? Because it's the players now that have to make those adjustments. But it's so rewarding to see the really the transition from when they come in as kids, when they're 17 years old, and then they graduate at 21, 22, and they're ready to go on and take on the world. And you see not just their baseball progress, but the progress from them as kids to men. And it's pretty awesome. And now they come back to campus, for alumni events, and you see how good they're doing. And it's a totally different way of a rewarding career. And it's been awesome. I love every minute of it.
That's so great. I wonder too, because one of the questions we got a couple questions from some of our listeners for you, and one of them was, what do you notice as the difference, if there is one? Because I think a lot of people talk about, when you talk about college baseball, the first thing a lot of people talk about is, some of those big Division I schools, talk about SEC, all that sort of thing. And then people talk about, well, there's always Division III colleges that you can go and play at, and it's very good competitive baseball. And it seems like sometimes, occasionally lost in the shuffle, is really competitive, really good baseball at the Division II level. Talk to us a little bit about, some of the things that you've seen at the Division II level, and what makes it such a competitive brand of baseball.
Yeah, it's anybody that says that it's the same as the big Division Ones, they're lying. It's not the same. It's the crowds are smaller. The talent level is not the same. Now, don't get me wrong. Throughout our D2, we have some really talented players that will go on and play and get drafted, but not to the level of depth that a Division I team would have. You go into a Power Fives and you go into their bullpen, and their fifth guy of the bullpen is still 90 plus. Well, those guys would be our starters, So, but baseball's baseball, and you have it's just, if you're playing baseball the right way, and you got guys that believe and hustle and work and have great work ethic, it's a great game, whether you're playing at that level or not. It's different. Like, we don't have like the replays, and stuff like that, or the capacities to do the stuff that those big Power Fives have.
Right.
But at the root of the game, it's the same. It's the same kids doing that. We have awesome games. We have really talented players in our division. We can touch on some of them. Like, one of them just pitched last night. Josiah Gray for the Nationals pitched last night. So there's guys like that come out that maybe didn't get a chance or didn't get seen, or, like Jay said, blossomed a little later than somebody else. And when we recruit kids, we don't really get the kids out of high school that are 90 miles an hour. We'll get the kids that are 86, 87, and we're going to develop them into being those guys down the road. And sometimes they pop, and sometimes they maintain that 86, 87. You teach them how to pitch, So it's just that's really the difference of it. It's the magnitude of it, but baseball's baseball on every level. You go to the D3 level, and a good friend of mine, Scott Landers, who you guys know, coaches one of the best teams in D3. He's taking them to the World Series. They play good brand of baseball. Can they beat the LSUs? Can we beat the LSUs? No, probably not. But in their division, they're playing great baseball. So I think that's the one thing too, is kids they got to find the right fit for themselves and be a good self-evaluator. I think that's one of the biggest things that has left a lot of the kids and parents nowadays, is to be able to self-evaluate and really put yourself into where you belong and where you can have a great, successful college career.
Well, yeah, you could say the same thing. Talk about divisions. This is college divisions, but you pitched in one of the toughest. So did I. I pitched in every division in Major League Baseball, but the hardest, the one that you've been on, two teams with Toronto and Boston, right? Yeah. That's the heavyweight Tyson. To me, it's incredible, the difference between divisions, even at that level, the highest level. So I think it's just a mentality, right? I used to have fears saying the same thing. Liverpool was a bigger program than Baldwinsville, right?
Right.
We were like, man, they got so many more athletes. I remember watching in high school games under the lights. We didn't have all the facilities, but Liverpool did. And I was like, oh, my God, Liverpool was the place, and the team in Central New York's like, damn, they're good, right? So, having that mentality, being scared, would a Lemoyne play a Vanderbilt ever? No. You guys, Lemoyne's programs, you've been bouncing between Division I, Division II, going back and forth. hopefully this NIL, we'll get into some of that NIL conversation maybe too, how that's going to placate into college programs, maybe bolster Lemoyne's and every other one. But yeah, the divisions, man, are tough, and I think it's just a mentality. Like you got to go in there, no fear, even though you're fearful. It's fight or flight. You can be anxious and nervous, but find a way, right? And then that's what you tell your pitchers when you go to your mound visits. I'm sure, right, Scott?
Right. No, it's true. It's true, and you want to find the right kid that has that, that has that competitive fire. And if you give me a team full of those guys, and we can make it work. And sometimes there's more talented kids that even play at the Division 1, 2 level that don't succeed as much as you think they would, just because of a work ethic or an attitude. So it's really, when we're recruiting, we're looking for kids that want to play. We like them to have the high ceilings and where they are right now, but we just want them to be able to buy in, and that's the most important thing for us.
Interesting. I want to ask too, because you brought him up, and it's funny because we were talking before we got on here. I remember before, it was our senior year, and Richie Kuhar and I, who played for you, one of my great friends from high school, we were talking about him getting ready to go into Lemoyne, and he was like, yeah, I don't really know if I'm gonna play shortstop because there's someone named Josiah Gray there, and I think he was still playing shortstop at the time, or doing a little bit of both. And I didn't really know too much about him at the time, and I looked up a little more and saw that he was throwing in the high 90s, and I was like, yeah, Rich, no offense, you might have to sit one out, but he would. But I wonder, what was it like to be able to coach someone with that talent, and kind of like you said when you were talking about seeing athletes develop, what was that development process like, seeing him blossom from when he came into, first, second round major league draft pick?
Yeah, he was different because, believe it or not, he wasn't recruited by anybody. So I had a buddy of mine, I was out in the recruiting trail, and a buddy of mine called me and said, hey, I got a guy who's working out 20 minutes away from where you're at. He had just finished his workout, so he was done. So I missed it. And I'm like, well, can you send me some video on the guy? Because they took video. So he sends me some video. And this was him playing shortstop and hitting. So, I liked the actions that he had. So I gave him a call, and then I went and, watched him play the following weekend. And he threw a couple innings, and he played short. I brought him in as a shortstop, and that could pitch. And he ended up pitching a little bit his senior year. And when he got in, he actually played a little bit of third base his first year. I think he pitched a couple innings. Didn't have the greatest success on the mound that year. And then he went away in the summer, played summer ball, and had a good summer, but didn't get a lot of at-bats, but started to pitch a little bit more. Came back his sophomore year, and he's our starting shortstop. But he's also going to be our closer. He's low 90s now. And I really think he had a breakout game. We were down in North Carolina playing early, a couple scouts in the stands, and I think in the 8th inning he hit a go-ahead 3-run home run, and then I brought him in for a 5-out save, and he punched out 5 and 4 or 5 with a 95-mile-an-hour heater, and I'm like, oh, this kid's real right now, So he ended up getting a chance to play in the Cape, which is very difficult for us as D2 to get guys to go in there. Sure. We had some help with some scouts that got him in, and then he had a really good time in the Cape and did well. Comes back and sits in the office, and I'm like, JoJo, your shortstop days are done, man. and he's looking at me like, man, I knew.
Was he a good hitter? Did it help?
He had some pop in his bat. He was a 250 hitter or so, but had his moments. Good base runner, but indecent with the glove and obviously the arm across the diamond. But at this point, it was like you have a future in this. Like why mess it up with that?
Hey, listen, when you play the lotto or you're gambling, dude. 70, 80% as a pitcher, maybe even 90. I'll take that every time, as opposed to hitting. I don't know hitters. I wouldn't want to be a hitter. It's tough.
Yeah, hell yeah. So he was like a little apprehensive, believe it or not. He's like, I thought you were gonna say that. Like I'm like, listen, trust me, this is gonna work for you. And then he ended up starting. He went 10-0 as a starter. He was the national pitcher of the year in the country for Division II. Yeah. And then he gets picked by Cincinnati on day one of the draft. So it was like super exciting. And, he's just taking off. His career is just going right now. And you know what? He was an academic All-American when he was here. So he's like the perfect poster child for our program when we talk
Yeah.
about it, because he wasn't just an All-American on the field. He was an academic All-American. His work ethic is second to none. He's great with people and is really good, personable kid. So we're pretty
That's where
proud of him.
I'm a little dressier for this mound visit. I just came from my son was honored and my nephew. They had the honor roll students. They had a little
Nice.
ceremony before school,
you
so
go.
that's why I'm a little dressed up for this mound visit. I just came right from our school. But I don't know if these kids are using Chat GPT to write their papers, or they got Scott Cassidy, coming to the office. The wisdom of Scott Cassidy. You
Yeah.
got through school too. I don't know what was more important, being on the mound or being a student
Right.
athlete.
Right.
That's always the funny thing. People always say like, "Hey, were you really a good student athlete? You got somebody." On the girls' soccer team or somebody writing your school paper. Now these kids got Chat GPT to write them for them, right?
They got ways to get through that now, I think,
Yeah.
from what I've heard. So, but yeah, that's a whole
Imagine
nother.
what we would have done, bro, if we had that. How much more in trouble we probably would have been.
No
If we
kidding.
had people, AI robot writing our term papers while we're drinking a couple ice cold lemonades.
Oh my God, it's funny. I know we just talked about Josiah Gray. I want to ask you too. I mean, talking about one of the more talented kids you've ever coached. How about your big league playing career? What are some of the more talented players that, or maybe it was coming up through the minor leagues? Who are some of the more talented players that you've ever played with? And have there been things that you've learned or experienced playing with them?
You
Being
gotta have a
teammates
great
with
story,
them?
man. You've run some
Yeah.
good teams with some big name players.
Probably one of the guys that had the biggest impact on me in the big leagues was Roy Halladay.
I knew you'd say
'Cause
that.
Yeah.
he was in our organization, obviously, a little older than me. I don't know if he was older than me, but he was in there way before me. But I don't know if you remember this. He came up and he had a really good outing. His first couple outings, almost threw a no hitter.
Yeah.
Maybe at Detroit or something. But then he couldn't throw strikes anymore, and they sent him down to minor league camp in spring I believe I was in high A, and he had to start from scratch.
Yeah, you redid
And
his whole mechanics, right? Changed his
everything,
whole.
yeah. Like he had his private pitching guy that went with him and revamped everything, and
Wow.
he worked himself up. And while he was working himself through the ranks again, I was in high A, I believe, and he came through high A, and then he went up to double A for a couple starts. But I got called up to double A at the same time, so we kind of made that jump.
Cool.
And just listening to him talk about his struggles and then what he was doing to get back. So then he finally gets back, and then obviously the Hall of Fame career
Right.
after that. But when I was playing for Toronto, I threw like 58 games my rookie year, and I had like a 5.7 ERA. And I had moments where I was really good and moments where I wasn't. And towards the end of the
That's
year,
standard. That's good nowadays. A 5.7.
yeah,
They don't
right.
even look at
Right?
ERA or batting
Give me
averages.
some
I don't
money
know.
right now.
You get paid right now.
Yeah. So towards the end of the year, they started messing with me. They wanted me to throw like submarine sidearm and dabble with that. And so I'd be throwing bullpens pregame, like underneath, and then game time, go back up and throw my own thing. And I remember distinctly during BP, Doc came out to the outfield and he's like, "Do you want to do that?" And I was like, "No, but I want to stay in the big leagues."
Yeah.
And he was like, "You're not going to stay in the big leagues like that. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to send you down to the minors, and you're going to have to learn how to pitch like that all the way up through the minors." And he's like, "I've seen you pitch. You're a big league pitcher. You do what you have to do. Somebody else will take you if they don't want you."
Wow.
And that stuck with me big time, because sure as nothing, at the end of the year, I get taken off the 40 man. And I'm like, what did I need to do? And they're like, you gotta throw sidearm, or else you're not gonna have any shot. I'm like, I'm not gonna have a shot anyway if I'm sidearm or not, for years. And I was like, I didn't do it. And I ended up going back to the minors, and then got traded to Boston, got up with them for a week or so, but then got traded to San Diego and had a better career at San Diego than I did at Toronto. So
That's a tough place to play, San Diego, right?
yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. No.
Hey, listen, you probably saved yourself some bone chips too. You dropped down there and changed your arm angle. I know the same thing. I was a first pick for the Giants. I get to AAA. They're like, Joe Horland was our pitching coach who pitched in the big league too. He goes, you know who you have to pitch like? I'm like, who? He goes, Kerry Wood. I go, I would love to pitch like Kerry Wood. He's striking out everybody, but I just got here. You drafted me for what I do, and now you want to change me. Like Kerry Wood's Kerry Wood. I can't pitch like him. I don't. Everybody's not the same. It's not robotic.
Yes,
so that's a great piece of advice by the legend Roy Halladay, the late Roy Halladay. Wow. God rest his soul. Amazing that you got to do that. That's a serious story. Yeah. Give me a little bit without maybe name dropping or whatever. There's a good story that you've had that you go sitting around a campfire and just a funny story or something experience. It doesn't have to be dirty. Just something that, like, on the bus. Did you have the embarrassing moment in the clubhouse, on the bus, on the plane? I know you've had one. It's just like your orange shirt, right?
A lot of embarrassing moments for me, but no, there's so many stories that you think of that are just fun. And like our guys right now, when we're on the bus at Lemoyne, when the freshmen have a really good weekend, we put them on the mic, right?
That's right.
And I'm sure you know this. Like you go on the mic as a rookie in the big leagues, and we had to get on the mic in the bus, and it's like sing a song, man, and you're like
high anxiety.
Nervous as heck. Like, oh my God, you hope you pick the right song. And I'm a 160-pound skinty white guy.
You'd rather run naked right down the street, in front of everybody, than sing in front of the bus in front of your teammates. Right. It's the worst anxiety ever.
It's terrible. And then so I actually sang like a Digital Underground song, and I was rapping it, and I killed it, and it was like I had the bus banging, and I'm like, this is my moment. I might have a 5 ERA, but this is my moment in the big league.
You could be a good clubhouse guy if they, hey,
I love it.
Around. I could sing Digital Underground, get the bus pumping.
It was funny.
That's right. Oh yeah, no, I remember those moments, man, and it was almost like, especially when you win. I mean, it was quiet buzz. If you lose, it was just funny that you were trying to respect guys having a hard day, 8-game losing streak. It's tough, but it's almost like too when you got a good team captain, the team leader is like, no, we're gonna act the same whether we're winning or losing because you gotta stay consistent, man. It's a hard knock, but yeah. The more bone chips you have in your elbow, a couple more social sparkers you have, and then you're in front of the bus going like, can I sing one? You're like, hey, I need to sing one. I got to get some shit out of here.
That's incredible. It's funny because, I mean, it's not at the same level, but I think everybody can kind of relate to that experience with, whether it's a coach or in some form, like trying to change something and you maybe not being comfortable with that. And it's interesting to ask you now as a coach, did you kind of take that experience and how do you bring that into your coaching days now? Do you try and, I guess, how do you find that mix between not necessarily being hands off, but letting the kids do, what they need to do to get, to the level they want to be at? And then, when do you know that it's time to kind of step in and be like, hey, maybe we do need to change this? How did you take that and put that into your coaching days now?
Yeah, it definitely had a huge role in my coaching thing because like Jay said, and he mentioned, about being robots, like you want to do this. I think the biggest problem that I have now is when like every kid has their own coach now, like every kid, they have this pitching coach. And if they have this pitching coach and they didn't do well, they're going to go to a different pitching coach and it's going to be, so they all have their guys, which is great. There's a lot of people in the game that can do really good with this stuff. But when they get here, I'm just so not a cookie cutter guy. Like I would never do that. And I think that everybody has their own uniqueness to them and it works for them. And there's the basics that you need to have with your pitching mechanics, but
sure.
Like a lot of the stuff for me at this level, what I tend to see is more mental with these kids than it is physical. So it's really about getting them to understand, sequencing and how to set up hitters and what they're looking at when the hitter's doing stuff. And I think that that's kind of a lost art because nowadays it's chase velo. Everybody wants to chase velo. So you have all these things with the weighted balls and the bands and all that. And it's like, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to throw harder. And then they spend 3 years chasing velo, but they don't know how to pitch.
Right.
And you're not going to pitch in college if you can't get anybody out. So
it's become predictable, right, Cass? I mean, to me, baseball, people used to say it was boring before. I go, it got more boring to me. And it's not because I'm that old man that says, oh, baseball was better when we played it and when we borrowed it. I just look at go, it's predictable now. I was happy. I was turning on the Blue Jay game last night, flipping through a couple of MLB games, and I was happy to see that the shift, Dante Bichette, Bichette,
Bichette.
Bo Bichette, he hit through the right side and punched the guy in from third base. I'm like, oh my God. Some of baseball the brand that I grew up on is coming back. And I love seeing that because it was gone for a little bit. You know, I saw a couple guys dropping a bunt down. You know, it's cool. But I love how you say, and we've been talking about just being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I think these kids got to have a little bit more knowledge and figure out, like I said, maybe you got to get Digital Underground bumping on your bus, right? Get them uncomfortable. So lead the way, baby. You're the coach, you know, get it going so that they can be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that's really something that is a lost art, especially early on. If they can do that, man, they can go a little bit further, faster.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and then trying to find that time to cut in and change something. That's when what they do is just not working. You know, and then you can see the frustration building, and then it's like, listen, why don't we try this? And I'll tell the kids, even when I recruit them, like, it's not my way. Like, the only way you're going to get better is if we communicate. Like, you have to communicate with me how you feel, what you're thinking, and we will collaborate on our efforts in the bullpens to get better. Because I'm not like a dictator where it's, hey, do this, and do this. And then, like, kids got to buy in. If they don't buy in, then it's no point. You know, and like we're lucky enough where we have a really good group of guys on this team. They get along. The culture's really good. So when somebody struggles, they'll go to a buddy of theirs, and then their buddy will actually be like, hey, Cass, you know, he's talking about this. And I'm like, okay, good, thanks. So it's like there's communication going on, and that's why it works. You know, if guys just, you know, struggle in silence and they don't tell anything, and they don't communicate back to me, and I don't know what they're thinking, then you're never really going to take the jump that you want. But that's what it is, man. It's just communicating and then being able to say, like, I think it's great. Like, Jay, if you were giving pitching lessons, there's clout behind it. Like, all right, well, he pitched in the big leagues, right? So, like, maybe I should listen for a minute, you know? Like, and he knows a little something.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that my way is the highway, because I tell these guys too, and like, how many pitching coaches have you had in your career, Jay? Hundreds, right?
Yeah, tons of them.
And people will ask me, like, who's the best pitching coach you have? I don't really know the answer.
My mom was actually a couple times even corrected some things. Because why are you doing this? Listen to anybody, you know, because there's things that, and I tell people, right, when we pitch together on a team, pitchers, almost you have to rival or one-up somebody. Like, if you're pitching with Roy Halladay, dude, I want to go out and do what he's doing, chase the rabbit. I've talked about it. Matt Morris in college, for me, he was a first-round pick with the Cardinals. I chased him. I was a freshman. I was lucky to have a guy leading the charge. Like, well, I got to just do what he's got to do and maybe a little bit more. And these kids got to do that. Like, even though you're on the same team, you're kind of competing with, and again, not against, but with, because it's that, hey, who's buying beers? Who's that bragging rights, right? Sitting out there and, hey, yeah, man, I noticed you were doing this thing. If you can have that friendship. So some of these kids, I think, they want, there's enough for everybody. Yeah. There really is enough for everybody. And to sit there and wish somebody bad, or I want him to do bad so I look better, that doesn't work. To me, it's like you're just being a coward, and that, hey, man, I can go do that too. Instead of elevating yourself that way, lead the charge. But, you know, again, too, in silence, I said the communication that you probably have to have with the students is way different than when our dads would grab us by the shirt and throw us down, sit us down, and, you know, finger pointed in our face.
Right.
Like a little different today's day and age without getting fired, right?
Yeah,
but,
that's
you know,
true.
maybe Snapchat or an Instagram. They have every method to communicate. They have every means with these things, right? The phones to find a piece of information. And you know, again, kudos to you, man. Having somebody at the helm that's played in the big leagues, I don't know who wouldn't listen to you because you have those experiences to draw from.
Yeah, it's and you got to surround yourself with people that you trust. You know, I got a couple good coaches that help me out, and you know, and again, even coaching wise, like it's not my way. Like I'll get their opinion on things. So even with pitching changes and stuff, which I'm the pitching guy, but I'll be like, thinking of this guy. What's on your mind? Because they're looking at it from a different perspective, you know.
Yeah.
But it's you're dead on, Jay, when you talk about like chasing somebody in front of you. Like, I think that's the one thing that bothers me with the youth programs now is that every family wants the other family to do bad, and so they can look good. And I coach my son's team. They're 14 now. I coach them, and it's just a small group of kids from the same area, and we're not bringing kids in from all over the place. We're teaching them how to play baseball the right way, but it's like, if you guys root for each other and make each other better, the more good people on this team, the more people are going to come watch them. Like they're not going to have one guy come to watch one guy. If you have 6 guys that are good, then multiple coaches will come watch you guys play eventually when it's that time. So it's like you got to have that internal fire to be better than everybody, but be better than them while they're still good. And it's part of the internal operations of the pitching staff in college. Is like every kid wants to start. I'm a starter. Yeah. Well, prove it. Get the guys out in relief first, and then maybe we can make an adjustment. And we did. We just made a couple adjustments this week that worked out for us. And then if you get that starting role and you go down to the bullpen, be the best bullpen guy. You can still do things there too. So it's instead of like, hey, I hope this guy doesn't pitch well so I can sneak into the starting role, like that kind of attitude.
Yeah, well, Kenny Rogers, I'll give a story to your point there. I got to play with Kenny Rogers, lefty, when I was with Detroit. Yeah. Veteran, and he said, dude, pitching in the bullpen made me a better starter because how many jams do you got to get out of that you put yourself in? You walk the bases loaded, you give up a couple donkey hits, an infield hit. One of the people always say, what's one of your best career highlights? A game, one that sticks out, and I'm so glad it's on YouTube because I reference it all the time to my kids. I go, I gave up 2 infield hits. I walked a guy in Seattle when I was with the Angels. And I got the bases loaded, and I had to work out of the gym. Mike Scioscia, thank God I was a veteran at the time. Mike Scioscia gave me the respect to go, hey, man, I got this. I don't know how I got this, but I got this. with Seattle on their feet going like, oh, we're going to win in bottom of the ninth, and I got out of the jam. But I go, you have to, as a starter, to my point. Kenny Rogers said it. He goes, if you're a good reliever, it'll make you a better starter because you are going to be in a jam 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a night when you're on that bump. So as a reliever, you better learn. You might be put into that fire.
Right. Might not even be your mess that you're cleaning up.
Yeah.
It's
dude, the beard's rocking good, man. Are you doing any Just for Men? Or is that all natural?
No, this is natural. It left here and then morphed down here.
That's what happens. In the nose, it goes in the nose and the ears. Yeah.
You ain't lying.
I love it. Scott, you've been so gracious with your time, and we really appreciate you taking the time to come on. We had one more question, and then we'll let you get out of here. And it's ending off on a lighter note, but I don't even think this is a question, Jason. You can answer this too, but because you guys obviously pitched around the same time. But this was one of the questions that was most asked of you. What was the toughest hitter that you ever faced? Whether it was college, coming up through the minor leagues, in the major leagues, what was the hitter that made me and it doesn't even have to be, one of the big names or whatever. Who gave you the toughest battle?
Well, that one's easy for me because I was pitching for Toronto, playing against the Yankees, and I'd have to come in and pitch against like Soriano, Jeter, but in the middle was Giambi. And man, so we're, back in the day, nobody had like MLB Network where everybody watched every game. So the only games anybody ever saw of mine were the Yankee games, right? So I get up there, Giambi takes a fastball deep on like whatever night it was. Well, the very next night I'm going in there and I'm like, well, I'll try to go back foot slider on him right now. Takes that one deep, back-to-back nights. I'm like, I'm done with this guy. Face him a couple days later, I throw him a changeup, which I never threw, hardly at all. And he smoked a line drive to third base. We caught it, but I'm like, that guy owned me. I didn't know how to get him out. He barreled up everything I threw at him.
So he was excited when you came in.
He was loving life.
You helped him. He owes you a couple cheeseburgers, man.
Well, what's funny is I was on my honeymoon with my wife in Maui that fall, and I'm sitting in this crowded restaurant, and doesn't he walk in?
No,
and go sit down.
We gotta leave. We gotta leave.
Yeah, and I'm like,
You should have been like, yeah, my bill's on that table over there.
Yeah, put it on that
Dumb and
guy.
Dumber thing on that guy right there. Yeah. Yeah, I had the same thing with Paul Konerko, running with Paul Konerko.
Oh.
I did figure him out. Luckily, I did figure him out. But in the beginning, it was like they announced his name, Paul Konerko. But I said Konerko, the ball was flying out of the park. So I figured him out. But, yeah, you always have guys you dominate and guys that dominate you. But that's the battle, man. And if you can live another day to get that chance, you know, that's what it's all about, man. But, Scott, man, what a great time to see you again in person.
Yeah, you
Hopefully
too.
when I get up there, we'll smash some wings.
Yes,
Casey
sir.
finally got a couple.
Yes, sir. Best wings
Did
in
you?
Cuse.
There
Best
you
wings
go.
I've had. So
Yeah, man. And best of luck, dude, with the season. Good job. Those kids are lucky to have you on their side, man. And I hope we get to see somewhere some secret video. I want to see it with you at the helm, front of the bus, singing Digital Underground and get your team going this year. They need it.
I'll have to make sure I'm about to retire before I send that out.
we hope you enjoyed that interview with Moyne College baseball head coach Scott Cassidy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to that. We want to remind you before you get out of here, subscribe to the show on YouTube, Top 100 Sports Network. Follow the show as well on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts if you just like to listen to your podcast. You can also find more of our content, some little clips on our social media. All of those are at Top 100 Sports Net. You can find those on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Let us know. Shoot us a message on there if there's some guests you want to see, maybe some questions you'd like us to, or maybe some topics you'd like to see us address. You can ask Grilli any questions you'd like. You can shoot us a message there, and we'll get that to him straight away. So, guys, thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode, and we'll catch you on the next Mound Visit.